Welcome to This Week in Racing, where we're going to be talking about Levine family drama, the rotating door of sadness that is Red Bull Racing, and also I'm going to get angry at some IndyCar news. But first, I need to talk about some serious news. Last night, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was involved in a plane crash as his plane ran off the end of the runway and caught fire. Now, Jr., his wife, his child, and all of the passengers on board the plane escaped with only minor injuries. No serious injuries, no deaths. And it's an absolute miracle looking at these spectacular pictures of this accident that everybody got out of it okay. And it's incredibly amazing as well, or at least just a sigh of relief for a NASCAR community that all too often has been struck by airplane crashes. For whatever reason, you just think back to Alan Kawicki or the Hendrick tragedy, and just I think everybody across the auto racing nation is just very, very happy to see that Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his family and his friends and everybody aboard that plane are all right. Now, obviously, this is a pretty heavy situation, so Dale Earnhardt Jr. will be sitting out the NBC Sports broadcast of Bristol, and it's unclear when he will return to active NASCAR duty, but I think I echo everyone's sentiments here that he should take all the time that he needs. Good news for Australian IndyCar fans and fans of the Bathurst 1000. IndyCar stars James Hinchcliffe and Alexander Rossi will be in a wild card entry for this year's Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000. They will be driving a Walkinshaw Andretti United Holden. That team, of course, I think the first two names are pretty obvious for those of you who follow V8 supercars, and the rest of auto racing is that Walkinshaw is Tom Walkinshaw, the famous Jaguar and other racing mogul's son, as well as Michael Andretti, but the United is actually Zach Brown, believe it or not. We had to get some sort of a McLaren reference in there this week. But it's going to be cool to see James Hinchcliffe and Alexander Rossi take on the challenge of the Bathurst 1000. I don't think they're expected to win by any stretch of the imagination. It's very difficult to jump across into a different discipline and immediately be on the pace, but regardless, I think IndyCar fans are going to have a lot of fun watching this team and what they can do in the Bathurst 1000. And now we get to talk about the Levine family racing drama. Matt Dibenedetto announced this week that he will not return to the number 95 Toyota in 2020. He described it pretty clearly that it was not his choice, let's just put it that way, that he is leaving. And then Adam Stern reported that with Dibenedetto out, that opens the door for Christopher Bell to move up from the Xfinity Series into a Cup ride. Now, there are several things that need to be talked about with this move, as NASCAR silly season is actually really starting to finally kick off. It's not going to be nearly as crazy as some of the other stuff and some of the other series that we've been able to talk about, but this is definitely going to be one of the big moves. Because I don't think it's any secret that the Levine family racing team is essentially the fifth Joe Gibbs racing car. So, and this was actually brought up to me on Twitter, and I thought about it for a second because, yeah, you're right. The person who brought this up to me on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, but like, yeah, it's a fifth JGR car, and you would think, hey, maybe NASCAR might step in and say something about this, but of course they're not going to. I don't want to sound too much like a guy who's like, gall darn cheating Toyotas, but there is something to be said that this is the Toyota factory team, Joe Gibbs Racing. And generally speaking, you don't want to, upset one of your manufacturers, and being able to allow them to do this kind of under the table thing with another team to get another team really good equipment, and then put Toyota development drivers in when there may not be a space available at the factory teams, quote unquote, at Joe Gibbs Racing, because of course we also heard that Eric Jones is going to return for next year in the number 20 car for that team. So from that perspective, is it bending the rules the way they're written? Absolutely. Is anything going to happen about it? No. Matt Dibenedetto, should he have been let go? He's had some great runs this season. He's had some top 5 performances, and he's clearly been improving throughout the season. Um, but I guess I would ask this question, and this is a tough one for me because I think that Matt Dibenedetto getting an opportunity is great in this equipment, and I think even Martin Truex Jr. It took him about a year to really get up to speed in Joe Gibbs Racing equipment. And once he got there, obviously we saw where he was able to take Furniture Row Racing. So yes, Christopher Bell I think is long term a better choice. But is it a long-term move for Leavine Family Racing? And that's the thing that I kind of go back to the first point, is this a Toyota move or is this a Bob Levine move? And I think it's pretty clear what it is. And that, I guess, goes to the point of what's happening at Gibbs, because obviously I don't think Kyle Busch is going anywhere. Denny Hamlin, I think he's staying around for at least a little while. We already got rid of Daniel Suarez, so don't have to worry about that anymore. You look at Eric Jones and you think, okay, this is like definitely Christopher Bell, 100% is a driver. I mean, just look at his Chili Bowl performances for sure. He is the guy that I think is definitely, I don't want to say the next Kyle Busch because I think that has a negative connotation to it, but I think he's the kind of driver that very well could be a multiple NASCAR winner. So looking at it from that perspective, yes, I think it's the right move. But at the same time, I do feel bad for Matt Dibenedetto because it looks like he's probably going to have to take a front row motorsports opportunity because David Reagan is retiring, and that's not the best seat in the entire world. He might be able to win a plate race, but you can say that about his opportunity with Leavine Family Racing. Sorry, orange Toyota with yellow number, I think, of freaking Furniture Row car for some reason still. But yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity for him. It's unfortunate it's only one season, but again, you're going to have to let me know down in the comments what you think about this. Is this the right move for them? Speaking of right moves, let's talk about another team that's making a big move. So, yeah, this one, some people were shocked by it, some people weren't, but ultimately Pierre Gasly is out at Red Bull Racing in Formula One, and Alexander Albon, who ironically enough replaced him at Toro Rosso, will now replace him at Red Bull. Gasly will return to his former Toro Rosso seat, and Alexander Albon will run the remainder of the season for Red Bull, starting at the Belgian Grand Prix. Ultimately, I'm going to make this pretty cut and dry on Pierre Gasly. He didn't perform. I think it was pretty clear that he just, for whatever reason, it wasn't working at Red Bull Racing. He was behind even at times McLaren, and if you look at the race in Germany, he was behind both of the Toro Rossos. I think that also happened in the first race at Australia where he was battling with the Toro Rossos. Now, and it's kind of funny talking about the NASCAR thing, is that Toyota and Red Bull are very similar. Toyota and NASCAR, Red Bull in Formula One, is that they can be a rotating door, especially Red Bull. Red Bull is absolutely cutthroat with Dr. Helmut Marko at the top, and if you're not performing, you're not going to stay there for very long. And unfortunately, it is a bit of an unrealistic expectation. I think it's very clear that Max Verstappen is absolutely 100% number one at that team and is always going to be number one at that team. So anybody, whether it's Alexander Albon, whether it's Pierre Gasly, whether it's Sebastian Vettel or Fernando Alonso, anybody in that team is going to have to perform at the level of Verstappen, or your time there is going to be very short. And yeah, it is an unrealistic expectation, but I mean, that's the expectation that they have. It's actually kind of ties into something that I've actually read in this Road and Track magazine, which is really this one in particular, the Formula One issue, is one that I would highly recommend if you're a racing fan, because it actually has an article called Clipped Wings, which is the story of Red Bull and their failed United States U.S. racing driver development program. And it really gives you a great insight into what Red Bull how Red Bull kind of operates, how Helmut Marko kind of operates the Red Bull team, and it's not always in favor of absolutely the best talent. A lot of times, they pick their winners, and whether or not that driver is actually cut out for prime time is unclear. So it's really, Red Bull Racing is going to be one of those things that's fascinating, 20, 30 years down the line to kind of read the tell-all books about everything that's gone down there, because it is really wild. Now, how do I feel Alexander Albon is going to perform? We're definitely going to have to wait and see. It's kind of surprising as well that Daniel Kvyat didn't get another call up, but maybe they felt like he had his opportunity at Red Bull. He blew it. Toro Rosso is as high as he's going to get. I don't know. I really don't know what Alexander Albon's going to do. But again, I'm kind of liable to think he's not going to live up to Max Verstappen. And finally, another Adam Stern report says that this may be the last Pocono IndyCar 500-mile race at the track. It's looking increasingly more likely that it will be replaced by a race in Richmond, Virginia, at that track that used to host IndyCars, I think back as far as 2009. But yeah, there's no either-or situation, despite the fact that there is an insistence apparently from both parties, meaning Pocono and IndyCar, that they are continuing to try to work to get a 2020 race date, but Stern is convinced that it's not going to happen. This is where I'm going to get a little bit hot under the collar, because IndyCar hasn't had a whole lot of ovals, or doesn't have a whole lot of ovals anymore. And 500-mile races have been the backbone of IndyCar racing for most of its history. Obviously there were the split years where, the IRL had one 500-mile race, and then you had 2 or 3 for kart, and then eventually it became none for kart, and then it became none for a long time until Randy Bernard came around and started revitalizing some of the 500-mile races, like at Fontana and at Pocono. And, and I get it, but certainly Pocono has had a checkered past, to say the least, with IndyCar in recent years, especially with some of the injuries and obviously the death of Justin Wilson. But I don't think it should leave the calendar. And certainly, to completely abandon the Northeast, I think, is a really bad idea. Because, you've already left Watkins Glen. I know that was a track rental, and it was a little bit of a different situation with Pocono. But Pocono, ultimately, is it a full crowd? No. But I've been going since 2015, and I have some friends who have gone since the very first race back there. And the crowds have really only increased since then. Outside of the rain-delayed races where, obviously people aren't going to show up. It hasn't gone down in attendance by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it's only gone up, and I think it's only gone up in prestige as an event. So it'd be really disappointing from that perspective alone to see it go. From the oval perspective, and I'm sure, people who say, they like ovals, they don't show up to ovals. I always hear that. My money is where my mouth is. I've been going since 2015. So for me, I'm going to bitch about it because it's sorry, I support the event. And then you get to the Richmond thing. Why, if you'd told me, hey, Richmond is coming back, I'd be like, all right, awesome. Another Saturday night short track for IndyCar. Obviously, Iowa's awesome. Richmond used to be awesome in the IRL days, so there's no reason to expect it wouldn't be great again. But when you say, hey, we're going to go to Richmond, and we're going to replace Pocono to go to Richmond, that's when I get a little bit annoyed. Because, okay, you're reopening a door in a market you previously were in and previously got pretty decent crowds. I think every year, even up till the last year in 2009, they had a really good crowd. It wasn't NASCAR levels, but, comparing NASCAR levels in 2009 to IndyCar levels was completely pointless because of how big NASCAR was at that time. Getting rid of one track for another, I do not understand. If you have 2 tracks that are willing to work with you, you should work to keep both tracks on the schedule. And again, I don't want to be too harsh here, but you hear Mark Miles say, we're happy with what we've got in the United States. We don't want to add anything to the calendar. We're looking at international races. That's fine and dandy, and I understand, you can get a bunch of money from going internationally. But I think we're almost 10 years away from the last time a new international race was added to the calendar and actually ended up there. You can talk about a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow all you like, but if you can't get to the end of the rainbow, what is the point in the first place of going down the rainbow path? Especially when you got two American tracks who are standing there going, yeah, we'd like to have you. Why not just, add a race to the calendar? And if you don't want to add another, or if you don't want to add another event or whatever, or you have some contractual thing, maybe just get rid of a Detroit race. It's frustrating to me because, again, there's a lack of ovals on the calendar. There's certainly a lack of super speedways. If Pocono goes away, you're down to Indy and Texas, and both of those races take place within the course of a month. And then the rest of the season is road and streets and a couple of short ovals. It's disappointing because, again, I think one of the things that makes IndyCar racing so great is the diversity of the calendar. You have to be good in 500-mile races. You have to be good in 300-mile races on a short track, 200-mile races on a road course, 200-mile races on a street circuit. All of these things have to add up and, produce a champion. And that's why, this sport is so engaging for people like me and certainly some of the people like you. And again, man, oh man, oh man, it would be an incredible disappointment for a variety of reasons, like I've just mentioned, that Pocono would go away, and I certainly hope it doesn't, because, you thought Pocono wasn't coming back when they left in '89. I don't see any scenario in the future where a Pocono would ever be in the discussion to come back again. It's kind of like Phoenix. Like, you came back there, it didn't work, and now it's probably off the table forever. And that's probably what's going to happen here. And that's incredibly, incredibly disappointing. So not a great way to end it, but I will be at Pocono this weekend. I'll be supporting the ovals. And, it is what it is. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.